Hi, this is Leah Myers of Myers Design Studio, and today we're going to do the first part of the Amazing Dahlia. Yes, we're going to do Y seams. Yes, we're going to do biased edges, and there's curved piecing too. So if you can master this, there is nothing you can't quilt, sew, make, or do. So stay with me and we'll go through the whole process of making the Amazing Dahlia. Okay, so you want to prepare your templates with template plastic, or you can use a heavy, like I don't know if it's called Mylar or whatever, but you can get it at the office supply place. They're just clear pieces of plastic that come in sheets. And I'll put the link down here below, the exact name. And that's what I used to use, just that. But I bought template plastic. It's a little non-skid type feeling on your hands, and it's a little easier than that slippery plastic. But I find that this works out. It's a little more expensive. It comes in like 4 sheets a package. So, I mean, I don't know. It's up to you. I'd rather save money and get the regular. But I tried this out because I just was curious. And cutting the pieces out with the 18 millimeter wasn't that hard. It takes a little bit of getting used to, and you can't hold it like a regular cutter, overhand like this. You sort of hold it like a pencil and then cut that way. And you just have to get used to the pressure. The only thing I had problems with is that this little black thing right here, if I'm pushing, I will accidentally push this down. So sometimes I was like trying to cut, and why isn't it cutting? Because the plastic thing got in the way. So you just have to watch out for that while you're cutting these pieces. And so we're going to do A, B, and C, cut all 3 of these out. So we're going to do 3 at a time, pieces 3 at a time. And there is a method of making a dahlia, and you can make the whole arm at once. But I found that my dahlia that I worked on, incrementally, or, putting the pieces together piece by piece, it worked out to be a lot flatter, and you don't have to worry about the biased edges as much. So once you get the pieces A, B, and C cut, go ahead and attach A and C together first before you start doing the middle. This is just to get you used to the small pieces and doing a quarter of an inch seam. It's just to get used to this round piecing, to ease into the piecing of it. You can actually, if there are any hand sewers out there, you can actually just go ahead and hand sew this 1/4 inch seam. When I did this, and I did this with my first dahlia, because these little blades were so small that there was no way I was getting it under a machine. So I hand stitched my center, and that goes for all of it. Like if you don't have a sewing machine, you have scissors, needle and thread, you can definitely hand do this whole thing. All I did was I would draw the line, a 1/4 inch line, and I would just hand stitch. I would use a back stitch, hand stitch, and that worked out really well. So anyway, now I'm going to start stitching these 2 together, and I'll take you through the first few that I'm sewing here on my machine. So mark, make sure you can see, mark a 1/4 of an inch. Oops, that's a little bit more. 1/4 of an inch right here. You're going to do a lot of marking. And I like mechanical pencils because the mechanical pencils help. This is on the underside. Just mark lightly. If this was a white fabric, I'd probably worry about that, but I've made a few of these and I don't think I would worry. And then you go ahead and start pinning. You can fold these pieces in half and then mark the half, you know, with a pen like I've done here. These are so itty bitty that you can pretty much just put it together. It's small, but it, you know, because if you have a large piece, they let me grab a pen. Anyway, and I'll put my pen right in the middle of that. And I like to, when I sew curves, I like to have the curved side up like this when I sew. It's just easier getting under the machine. And make sure when you start, because this little featherweight has a this little foot, make sure that mark is in that where the needle is. And I kind of wish this foot was an open toe foot so I could see better. But so and then put the needle down, and then you just start sewing 1/4 inch right there. And just take your time, because this is the beginning of it, and make sure both sides are together as you sew. And I need a kind of a short stitch length. So, oops, that's not short enough. A little less, because it's on a curve. And want to be careful. And there's going to be a little ease, so just walk that ease in, because this is a bias. And once you get used to working with bias, so I'm coming to the end where that mark is, and see that little point wants to jump away. Don't worry, just lift up the foot, place that little corner back down right there, and hold it with your, oops, still wants to kind of walk away there. There we go. And down. That's why you can hand sew this a lot easier. I probably, you know, because you can get it really sharp. Okay, so once you get to that little point, reverse stitch a couple stitches. I'm going to hand do that, and then take it off. Just a couple stitches, because you don't want that to come apart. Okay, and then there's our curve piece right there. Go ahead and press these, and we'll start with the blades next. With the blades, you want to put right sides together, because a couple of these I sewed wrong. I sewed this part right here the wrong side, so I had to take it apart really gently. So if you have to take any of them apart, just do it real gently. So I'm going to sew these blades together, and I'm putting little dots on 1/4 inch. I'm going to repin that. That's not right. Little dots on okay, so right here on the point, put a little dot here, 1/4 inch, and then down here 1/4 inch. And you stop sewing at that 1/4 inch right there and right there. Right here it's important because you want the very center to be flat. And it's right here, it's important because your next seam is going to go on this side right there. So I just mark and pin accurately. And, you know, just make sure you scoot that piece in there. And 1/4 inch. I kind of eyeball the 1/4 inch because I've done this so many times. I've got it, but if you don't, measure it and mark it. And put 2 blades on at a time. I put my pin right there inside that little dot, and I kind of angle up and same thing with this one. Because when you're doing Y seam, you're just getting ready for that. And I'm going to put one in the middle. So I'm going to sew these 2 at a time. Okay. Well, it's okay. I've got the point. I would rather start sewing where there's the fat end on this side, but that's fine. I'll just sew this side. It won't hurt anything. So right at 1/4 inch. Make sure you've got small stitches. Okay, so this one's a featherweight, so I'm right below the 20. If you're, which I don't know what that means on a featherweight, because on the other side it says 15, so I'm at the 15 mark. So I would probably do a 2.0 or a 2 point, if you've got it, 7.5 or 1.5 or something like that. But anyway, just the point is do a smaller stitch. So, because this, you know, is all going to go together. And make sure, and it's super crucial, is that you stop at that dot, that 1/4 inch dot. And I usually walk a few, and then I'm going to back stitch a couple back stitch, not stay. Back stitch a couple and then do it again. And you can chain piece these. Now where do I have the dots at? Okay, now I'm gonna see. I prefer to start sewing on this direction going down, but that didn't work out the first time because I had it marked. But if you want, you could just flip it over and mark the dots, and then that way you can start. And we're sewing the 2 by 2, and then we'll put these two together. In fact, I'll just do that, and then you kind of just you can chain piece these. If you're hand stitching these, do the same thing, except hand stitch. And back stitch a little bit because I'm at the dot. All I want to do is just kind of reinforce that point. It's a real, these points are crucial. So then you just take these 2, and I'm just going to press to one side. I'm just going to press to one side. I've never pressed open. And so I've got two blades together. So you just take those 2 and then you connect those 2 together. And each time you sew a blade, that one, okay, make sure you mark that quarter. Okay, right sides together, right. Oh my, I love it when I'm sewing and I've sewn something wrong and I have to rip it out. Such a wonderful feeling. Right sides together, and I still mark that dot where I've got to sew, because this is it's not fast or easy, this dahlia. It isn't. But what you'll learn from it is invaluable. And there is a 1/4 inch right here, because you'll be absolutely a master at Y seams, curves. You won't be able, anything else that you do as a quilter, you will be able to do it. And I started off my quilting life, I want that to stay there though. So that's the point. I'm going to put my first, I'm going to pin this the other way, because I'm going to pin this way, and I'm going to go through that little dot like that. I know it's kind of far away, you can't see it that well, but just know that I've marked that dot, and now I'm going to move what I've ironed over. Going to put that dot right underneath my needle. Carefully slide that pin out of the way. Make sure that my machine's going forward, not backwards. And now I'm going to sew. And I need to put some shelf paper underneath this. It's that little shelf paper that's kind of rubbery looking. And I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. This really sounds good. The machine, it must have needed a bit of some oiling because it's so much quieter now because of the mechanical machine. Okay, so that is one. Okay, yes, they're all going the same way. I'm just ironing all these seams the same way, and I want that bottom to be flat, and I use a steam iron. Make sure you get that 1/4 inch because you want that bottom to lay flat, and I've ironed that backwards. I'll fix it right now. Yeah, there we go. All right, and so I just continue 2 by 2 and then put the 2s together and put those together, and I'll be right back and we'll go ahead and finish up. Now I'm pinning the 4 pieces together, and when I pin this end, I make sure that these 2 on this end, these 2 seams are, when I sew them, they're going to be that direction. So in order to keep them out of the way, I am going, because I want all this to be, I don't want it to be sewn down, so I'm going to go from the back, and hopefully I don't stab myself. There we go. I'm just going to, oh, how do I keep that from going down? I'd love to pin it. It's just a little thick. Let's see if I can get it up this direction, just barely catching it. Yeah, I pretty much can control that because I want to stop my needle right there where that mark is, where my pin is. Okay. So let me prepare the next 4 so I can get these all done. And when you prepare the next one, just like everything else, okay, so I want to sew from this direction down. I could start it either way, but I like to start at the fat side, the bigger, wider side. And a 1/4 inch dot, same here, and now it's getting close to the end. Okay. And I just pin right where that, and make sure they're both lined up. Pin right where that dot is. Pin right where that dot is. And as I sew, I want to get all these seams out of the way, because I want to sew right there. And I don't want to catch any of those bulky seams because it's all coming to a point. All right, let's see if I can get this one going. Like I said before in another video, put the needle down in the dot before I start talking. Yep. Make sure it's a small stitch, sorry, which makes a small seam. And I was learning how to quilt, and my mother found out, well, I told her, I was on the phone with her, and I said, Mom, I'm learning how to quilt. And she's like, oh, good, I want a dahlia. And I'm like, a dahlia? What the heck is that? So My mother loves dahlia quilts. It's her favorite. So it's going to be fat, fat, fat on this side because you got lots of seams coming together. So just go slow and then just sew right to that dot and then back stitch just a couple stitches. And I didn't sew right to that dot. I can see it. There we go. Now I go back again. Just make sure. And I do believe, why did that? So I don't know. Let me see. Still have, looks like it skipped somewhat. So I'm gonna take that pin out. I'm gonna turn it over. I'm gonna make sure, I don't know why it skipped just a little bit there. Maybe it's because of the bulky seams, but I'm gonna go in a different direction. Oops, and it's not quite 1/4 inch on this side. Darn. All right, well, I'm skipping to the next one because I gotta rip that out. Or do I? Can I just resew it, or it's perfect on this side, not perfect on that side. So nope, gotta do that one again. So yep, on camera, there's a mistake. Oh no. Make sure. Did I pin it right? Yes. Okay. Let's get this one right. So don't get frustrated. It's fine. You know, if it's not right, you find out the mistakes now. Because this is not an easy quilt. It's not an easy technique. You are learning a lot of skills, or if you've done this before, you know that this takes a lot of skills. Well, I'm glad I didn't sew the heck out of that thing. You know? I stopped and I looked, and I'm going to redo that because I want this to lay perfectly flat. So let's see. I'm keeping those out of the way and go one more stitch, and I'm going to go back, and that sewed perfectly. Maybe my featherweight was like warning me I didn't have a perfect 1/4 inch seam, saying stop, you're not doing it right, so it wouldn't sew. I'm just probably not. Anyway, let me pause this and re-sew this, and then we'll put these two halves together. Okay, now we're going to sew. So I've marked my 1/4 inch right here, right? And I want to match up the blades, ends like that. And I'm going to pin it down, and I've pinned it down over there. Pin it down in the center because I think that's where I went wrong the last time, because I want this to go smoothly. And I'm going to sew just this part right here. Just that part. So if you notice that the quick and easy dahlias or other ones that are simpler, they don't really go into the, oops, okay. They don't go into the center part that much. They'll substitute it for a circle. Maybe not put your car in reverse if you want to drive forward, right? So there we go. And a small stitch. Small, small, small. And yeah, they'll put a circle instead of these blades and the little leaves. Okay, I'm gonna back stitch right there for a little bit because there was a little, I was cutting these blades out and I have a little bit of a, and I want to make sure all of that, and I'm going to sew right to this little dot that I've put down. And, oh, how did my stitch get, there we go. Okay, sew to that dot. So, up and back up. Okay, good. I'll put it forward so the next time. All right, stop there. And I'm gonna flip it over. and pin this side. It's partially pinned now, but we need to pin it better. So make sure everything is lined up. I'm going to just sew one side and then the other side. We're not going to go straight across because we want this to lay flat. And so this will take a little finagling, get that center. Because at the end, we want this center to do a little spirally thing at the end. Right? There we go. Let me put a couple more pins. Because we want to spiral out. Kind of like those half square triangle tricks where you take a couple stitches out and then you have this tiny little miniature half square triangle. Not half square. Is it half? No, it's the four squares. Where you see a tiny little 4 square thing because you can make that lay flat. All right, I'm going forward. Gotta remind myself and get this in the gear. Okay, now I'm getting close to that. I just want to make, I'm taking this pin and I'm just sweeping those seams out of the way because I want those seams to be free. I have had it where they've caught. Okay, I've got to the point where my mark is and I backstitched a little bit and now I'm done. Now, here is the moment. Okay, I'm going to press this open and I'll show you. And in the center, okay, so in the center what I'm doing is I'm just going to I'm going to use this little pointer. I'm going to flatten it out and make it come out in a spiral like that. Just kind of, finagle it with your finger and it kind of spirals a little bit. And also check if there's any poking through. And if there is, we've got to do something about that. So at this point, to make this look really good, I would take just a needle and thread and stitch really closely. I have to undo that spiral though. I have to undo that. I've got to flatten it back out. Because that's why you check. You check to see if that center is closed. If it isn't closed, and you've got stuff poking through. So I'm going to try another thing instead of needle and thread because I am not going to get, so I didn't sew straight across. So let me try that, sewing that straight across to close that up to make sure that center is not going to pop open. Okay. Get all of my blades in a row. Okay. Backstitch a little bit. Okay. I'm going to close that center up. Let's see if that worked. Or you can get a needle and thread, just whip stitch inside there and make sure all those blades are together. But if I have a machine, I'll use it. Oh, okay. Yep, nothing's poking out now. Okay. Now I'm on the very last piece to put inside the dahlia. Right now it looks like a sunflower a bit. And so far it's gone pretty well. I have a couple of tips. When you have the sunflower, or it's not a sunflower, dahlia. Okay, let me get it turned around. I found that if I had the these seams right here pointed away from the inner part of the little petal, this little petal. If it's pointed away, it's easier to set that Y seam. What I mean is, and in fact, this is the wrong way right here. I should iron it that way because I'm going to set, oh wait, no, that's not right. It's right because I'm going to be setting it from right sides together, not wrong sides together. Anyway, it's right because I'm going to be putting this petal 1/4 inch away, and these are all Y seams. And if you could do a Y seam, you can make a box pillow because if you make a box pillow, it's the same method. You have Y seams, like if you see the top of the cushion and then you see the side panels, that side panel and the top of the cushion at the corner, that's a Y seam. And I think because I had done, I'm going to mark this 1/4 inch here, because I have had experience making like box pillows, you know, before I start quilting. This was a little easier for me to figure out because my first box pillow looked like a mess, but I ripped all of it out and then redid it. But it's the same method. You're setting this triangle inside another triangle. Anyway, you're setting it, I'll put it down here. You're setting it inside there, and you want it to lay flat once you're done. And the trick is pins. And I've taken some close-up photographs because it's super hard to show you exactly how this looks from all the way over there. So you put your, because your petal has to be up, you put your first pin 1/4 inch away, right? 1/4 inch away, and then you set that pin inside 1/4 inch. I have up close photographs of what this looks. Oops. Almost made a mistake. Right sides together. Oh my. So, and I also noticed that this isn't pressed right. So it has to be pressed to the seam. Somehow it got folded over when I pressed. And I should have caught that before. So I'm going to unfold this a little bit because it's not going to set in right. That when I pressed this one triangle, it just folded over a little bit on that seam. So I want to undo that because what will happen is it'll be too short. I almost did it again. Okay, so 1/4 inch away, and you just use this pin as a guide, and you leave it there, and then you do the same thing on the other end. And this one, and the seam has to be away from you. Remember I was picking out seams in another section? That's why, because my seam was folded this way, it should be out away from me. Away from me. And this will take a couple times, practice this. And then I'm placing that pin 1/4 inch away on that seam, this seam right here. So it's 1/4 inch away. So now I just leave these two pins, and I want them to be straight. Oops. And this is going to want to flop around. I want it to be straight. And once I find that they're straight and the fabric is, the edges are straight here, I set pins in. I'm going to put one in the middle first. Okay. And then I'm not moving that pin. I'm going to put one close to that dot, but not on it. Close to that dot, but not on top of it. and I don't move these pins. Sometimes I'll pick up the pin very carefully and then just set it right back. Because if you try to pin this like this, you move it down, you're going to move that top fabric up. So don't move that because it's straight right now. So if you want to pin with that pin, you'll have to lift it back up and pin it, because you don't want your fabric to you want it to meet on the top right here and have that 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to sew this. I'm going to put my needle down exactly where that little pencil line is, where that little dot is. Take that pin away, right down. And I had to do some adjustments with this because I tried several feet. I tried my edge foot, 1/4 inch edge foot. I tried a roller foot because it was clear. And then this is the 1/4 inch foot that I showed you earlier. None of these really worked out because I needed a clear view. This one worked out great because it has a clear view of where that line would have, where that dot would have been. This one, it's a perfect foot, but I wish it was open, right where the needle would go down. If it were, it was just too hard to see, and my pieces weren't coming out right. So I had to put the original foot back on, and I had to put some seam tape down. So you put the needle down, and you want to stitch in a very small stitch, and then you just go down 1/4 inch. And I have something folded here. I don't know what. I don't want to take that pin out, but for some reason I'm going to have to take the pin out because I've got one blade is on top. This has not happened on any of the other pieces, just this one. All right, I'm good now. All right, and then you stop exactly where that other pencil mark is. And then back stitch a couple times, just for stability. You know, give it more strength there. And clip the threads. You'll be clipping a lot of threads because you can't really chain stitch this like we did the blades. And the inner blades, what I found, and this will happen to you, is that you're going to have some bias stretch here. It's just inevitable, right? So as you iron it, you'll see if it's folded in some spots. That means that it wasn't perfectly round. It wasn't perfectly round. I mean, it's not laying perfectly flat. So what you do to fix it is you go along a few of the blades and go in about, it's a minuscule amount, because you want to make up some of that slack, because this kind of stretches as you sew it. You just make another seam on the back, and right next to that one stitching, you just go right next to that stitching carefully, just a little bit, not 1/4 inch. It's like maybe, the math on that would be less than 1/4 inch. I would say about an eighth, or just the tiniest bit, just a tiny seam on either one, and then do it on a few of the blades. Like do 2, and then turn it back over. See if it lays flat. If it still didn't lay flat, go back and do another one. You know, just make the stitching tighter inside that seam, making it so it's not going to be 1/4 inch. It'll just be a little bigger, and that way you can make this center flat, because this center is extremely important. If this center does not lay flat, it will look weird. And so anyway, make sure that lays flat. So now we're going to turn, and this is the Y seam. We're going to turn this piece to match the other one. Now this side is already okay, the one you just sewn. And so now you just pin through this side, and I have an up close picture of this. And when you do it, make sure that pin comes out where that seam is, where this little top piece is. Make sure it's coming out. You want it to be right on the seam. And then go down 1/4 inch. I'm going to have this towards me. And I made sure I didn't have as much coffee as I did yesterday. I was shaky yesterday, so. But I would have loved to have had another cup of coffee. And then make sure it's straight. And then, yep. And then pick up I pick up the pin and pin it right there, so I know that it's there. Now it will seem kind of wonky, but don't worry. Just fold your fabric in half like this, so that you're holding it in this way, and that all the fabric underneath is out of the way. All you have are these two pieces that you want to sew together, and this does take patience. And now I've got my point where my dot has been sewn. And normally I go from this side, but I'm gonna go, you can sew from either side, but just make sure you have that 1/4 inch. Perfect. Because you don't want to, and I've pulled out. I noticed later on it wasn't looking right, and I'll check. Sometimes if you sew and you find that one of the other pieces has gotten away from that 1/4 inch, like it would scoot down a little bit, you can unpick that and then just re-sew it like you sewed the other one. It'll be fine. Just don't, be rough with it. Be very gentle. It will work out. And I did have to go back and fix a couple, because as I'm, holding the layers, they want to go away. They just want to not behave the way they're supposed to. It's fine. And so this is the cool part. If you did it all right, which I know you will, if you did it all right, so what I like to do is I like to hold it down like this. And so the way this seam on the blades, I like to keep it folded underneath the same direction. And you are going to have a little bulk underneath here, because that's going to have a fold there. And I like to just iron it from this direction. The other two sides, there's going to be a lot of bulk here. It's going to be a lot of bulk here. Don't worry about that. That's the next row. We're going to address that in the next row. Okay, and then I like to just iron these seams flat. And then I go from the front, and it's hard to tell which one I just sewed. There it is, I think. And there we go. And this is all looking very good. Now, don't get discouraged if it looks not completely flat. It will. It's all biased edges, and the biased edges will, kind of come back together. But don't let that scare you. And then now we're done with the first three. The first three, isn't that pretty? And it's only going to get better, right? Because I'm going to do each of the petals 3 at a time. We'll sew 3 at a time, and then we'll set them in. The reason why I do this is that I've done the method where you do the whole arm, but the bias stretch on that was too much. So what I want to do is I want to control the stretch. So I'm just going to put 3 petals in at a time and see how that works out. And And it should work out really well. If not, we'll just do one petal at a time, make sure everything's flat because we have to do adjustments. But I think that 3 at a time would be a good. That way, this will grow bigger faster, and you'll have less Y seams to deal with. But Y seams are not scary. They're easy, and you're doing Y seams and curved piecing in this, right in this one section, because this is a curve. Because it's round. And if you follow the pattern and follow the template and cut everything precisely, you should be fine. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate you watching. And I appreciate all your comments. Keep them coming. I will see you in the next episode. We're going to do part 2 of the Amazing Dahlia. Bye.